They lit up the silver screen and captivated millions. But behind the scenes, these Hollywood icons were making enemies at every turn. What if the star you've admired your entire life was actually Hollywood's most hated personality? The stories I'm about to share might forever change how you see these legendary performers. Shelley Winters. Shelley was a highly talented actress, but her strong personality often overshadowed her abilities. She was known for being difficult to work with, and her outspoken nature frequently led to conflicts with other actors and directors. Shelley's fiery temperament and refusal to compromise made her a polarizing figure in Hollywood, admired by some for her passion, but criticized by many for her abrasiveness. One notable instance of her contentious relationship was with Marilyn Monroe. Initially, Shelley and Marilyn were friends, sharing camaraderie as two women navigating the challenges of the film industry. However, their relationship soured over time, leading to a public falling out. Shelley once described Marilyn as the most insecure person she had ever met, a comment that was widely perceived as cruel and unnecessary. Remarks like this contributed to Shelley's reputation for being mean-spirited and hurtful, particularly when dealing with people she had once been close to. Shelley's tendency to be loud and unapologetically outspoken further alienated her from many of her peers. She was not one to sugarcoat her opinions, even when doing so might have spared feelings or preserved professional relationships. Her demanding attitude on movie sets added to her notoriety. Shelley often insisted on having things done her way, clashing with directors and frustrating co-stars who found her approach overbearing and disruptive. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney frequently clashed with directors and co-stars, insisting that things be done his way. His domineering attitude created tension on movie sets, and many colleagues found him exasperating to work with. While his talent and charisma were undeniable, his insistence on control and his volatile temperament made him unpopular among peers and crew. These behaviors tarnished his professional reputation, even as he continued to deliver remarkable performances. Mickey's personal life was equally turbulent. He was married 8 times, and many of these unions were plagued by scandal, public arguments, and bitter breakups. His marriage to actress Ava Gardner, one of his most high-profile relationships, epitomized the chaos of his private life. Their brief union was marked by intense arguments, with Ava later describing Mickey as controlling and jealous. These revelations further damaged his public image, painting him as a man unable to maintain harmony in his personal relationships. What few knew was that Mickey suffered from undiagnosed bipolar disorder for much of his life, experiencing dramatic mood swings that contributed to his unstable relationships. During manic phases, he would lavish extravagant gifts on his wives and make grandiose promises he couldn't keep. During depressive episodes, he became paranoid and accusatory. Gardner later admitted in private correspondence that she had genuinely loved Rooney, but couldn't withstand the emotional whiplash of his untreated condition. His 5th wife, Barbara Ann Thomason, had been working with doctors to get him proper psychiatric help when she tragically passed away in 1966, sending Rooney into a downward spiral that lasted years. In addition to his marital woes, Mickey faced significant financial troubles throughout his life. Despite earning millions during his career, he struggled with debt and declared bankruptcy multiple times. He often attributed his financial problems to the mismanagement of others, including agents and accountants. But his inability to take responsibility led many to view him as irresponsible and reckless. His financial instability, combined with his personal scandals, made him a controversial figure in the public eye. Klaus Kinsky. On film sets, Kinski was infamous for his violent outbursts. He regularly screamed at directors, co-stars, and crew members, creating an environment of fear and tension. His behavior was so extreme that it often disrupted production and left lasting scars on those who worked with him. Kinsky's volcanic temperament had roots in his harrowing wartime experiences. As a German prisoner of war, captured by the British, he spent nearly 2 years in a POW camp where he suffered severe malnutrition and witnessed daily brutality. The psychological trauma of this imprisonment, combined with what many psychiatrists now believe was untreated borderline personality disorder, created an inability to regulate emotions. During rare moments of calm between projects, Kinsky would sometimes sit alone for hours, silently weeping over his own inability to connect normally with others, including his own children. One of the most infamous examples of his on-set volatility was his tumultuous relationship with director Werner Herzog. The two collaborated on several acclaimed films, including Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and Fitzcarraldo. But their working relationship was fraught with conflict. Herzog once revealed that Kinsky's behavior was so unbearable that he seriously considered hiring a hitman to off him, a statement that underscored just how extreme their clashes had become. Kinsky's arrogance and egotism only added to his infamy. He was unapologetically self-absorbed, frequently belittling those around him and openly proclaiming himself superior to his peers. This unrelenting arrogance alienated colleagues and made him one of the most disliked figures in the industry. While his intensity and commitment to his roles were undeniable, his inability to treat others with respect overshadowed his contributions to cinema. His professional controversies were compounded by a deeply troubled personal life. Kinsky's daughter Paula Kinsky later published a harrowing memoir in which she accused her father of years of SA during her childhood. These allegations shocked the public and cast a long shadow over his legacy. While Kinsky had always been a polarizing figure, the accusations of abuse solidified his status as one of the most reviled individuals in the film industry. Ryan O'Neal. One of Ryan's most notable flaws was his temper, which often led to explosive situations and fractured relationships. His most infamous personal conflict was with his daughter Tatum ONeal, with whom he shared a deeply troubled and volatile relationship. Tatum, a child star who achieved fame in her own right, publicly accused Ryan of being abusive and neglectful. She described their relationship as rocky, detailing incidents that portrayed Ryan as a controlling and often cruel father. These revelations tarnished Ryan's reputation, making him seem more like a bad parent than the charming leading man he portrayed on screen. His contentious relationships extended beyond his family. Ryan frequently clashed with his co-stars, creating an atmosphere of tension on set. One of the most publicized conflicts was with Ali McGraw, his love story co-star. Despite their on-screen chemistry, the two had a major falling out, which added to Ryan's growing reputation as difficult to work with. He also had a high-profile feud with Farrah Fawcett, his longtime romantic partner. Their relationship was plagued by drama, including public arguments and accusations, and their bitter disputes often made headlines. The tragedy of Ryan and Farrah's relationship ran deeper than most knew. During Farrah's final battle with cancer, Ryan demonstrated remarkable devotion, staying by her bedside for months and reconnecting with the tenderness that had first brought them together. In private journals released years after her death, Fawcett wrote that O'Neal's care during her illness showed the man I always believed he could be. This glimpse of his capacity for selfless love made his previous failures seem all the more tragic, a case of potential kindness buried beneath layers of dysfunction until it was almost too late. In addition to his interpersonal issues, Ryan's life was riddled with scandals and legal troubles. He was arrested multiple times, including charges of substance possession, which further tainted his public image. These incidents combined with stories of his erratic behavior, made it increasingly difficult for people to reconcile the charming characters he played on screen with the troubled man he appeared to be in real life. Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper's substance abuse issues were central to his reputation for being difficult to work with. Known for his excessive partying, he struggled with serious drug and alcohol addiction throughout much of his career. These problems made him unpredictable and unreliable, creating chaos on film sets and testing the patience of his colleagues. Hopper's descent into addiction was tragically accelerated by grief. When his close friend James Dean passed away in 1955, 19-year-old Hopper was devastated, having viewed Dean as both mentor and artistic soulmate. In private letters discovered after Hopper's passing, he wrote that he tried to keep James alive by becoming him, adopting not just Dean's acting techniques but his recklessness. This grief-driven identification pushed Hopper toward increasingly self-destructive behavior that eventually culminated in substance abuse. By the mid-1960s, his consumption of drugs and alcohol had become so extreme that he experienced substance-induced psychosis, requiring hospitalization. His behavior was particularly notorious during the production of Apocalypse Now. Director Francis Ford Coppola reportedly had an extremely difficult time managing Dennis, whose erratic actions and substance fueled antics, disrupted the already challenging shoot. The chaos he brought to the set became legendary, adding to his reputation as a brilliant but deeply troubled artist. Dennis was also known for being confrontational and argumentative, which further alienated him from directors, co-stars, and crew members. One of his most high-profile conflicts occurred with Peter Fonda, his co-star and co-director, in the groundbreaking film Easy Rider. Despite the film's enormous success, creative and personal differences between Hopper and Fonda led to a bitter falling out that ended their friendship. Hopper's insistence on doing things his way and his combative nature made collaboration difficult, even with those who shared his artistic vision. In addition to these professional challenges, Dennis's unpredictable behavior extended to his personal life. His volatile temperament and penchant for pushing boundaries often got him into trouble, contributing to his reputation as a Hollywood bad boy. While his rebellious spirit and raw talent were admired by many, his off-screen antics made it difficult for others to work with him or maintain lasting relationships. Claudia Cardinale. Cardinale's choice to work with European directors who valued artistic expression over commercial success further contributed to her divergence from the traditional Hollywood mold. In Hollywood, studios often demanded conformity, both in terms of an actress's public image and the roles they played. In contrast, European filmmakers typically offered more nuanced and complex roles for actresses, allowing Cardinale to demonstrate a range of talent that many of her Hollywood peers were unable to showcase. Born Claude Josephine Rose Cardinale in Tunisia to Sicilian parents, Cardinale's early life was marked by a traumatic experience that shaped her entire career approach. At 17, she was essayed and became pregnant, choosing to keep and raise her son, despite intense pressure to hide his existence. Unlike many actresses who were forced to conceal scandalous pregnancies, Cardinale, with the support of Italian producer Franco Cristaldi, integrated motherhood into her identity rather than allowing Hollywood to erase it. This early stand against industry control established her pattern of valuing personal integrity over commercial expediency. Her refusal to conform to Hollywood's more commercialized expectations set her apart, but it also contributed to a sense of estrangement from the U.S. film industry. She was less of a media sensation in Hollywood and more of an acclaimed, but somewhat elusive, international star. Despite her undeniable talent, this selective approach to her career and her preference for European cinema meant that she was not always as celebrated in the US as some of her contemporaries. Hollywood's tendency to prioritize actresses who were willing to conform to the industry's demands for fame and marketability left Cardinale with a more modest level of recognition in America, especially compared to the more ubiquitous presence of actresses who fully embraced the Hollywood system. Her avoidance of mainstream American productions and her refusal to fully embrace the starlet image likely made her seem more distant and enigmatic to the US audience, even as she achieved legendary status in European cinema. This decision to maintain a lower profile in Hollywood also meant that she was not as exposed to the kind of press coverage and media scrutiny that American actresses frequently endured. While stars like Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor were continually in the public eye, their lives and careers becoming a fixture of American popular culture, Claudia Cardinale's career was more confined to the artistic circles of Europe, where she was celebrated as a sophisticated and accomplished actress, but less familiar to mainstream American audiences. Robert Blake. Robert Blake's career and personal life were forever marred by one of Hollywood's most infamous scandals. In 2001, he was accused of offing his wife, Bonnie Lee Bakley, a case that captivated the nation and cast a dark shadow over his legacy. Long before this scandal, Blake's life had been shaped by extraordinary childhood trauma. Born Michael Gubitosi, he endured severe SA and physical mistreatment from both parents. As a child actor in the Our Gang comedies, he was frequently beaten on set when he couldn't remember lines or cried during filming. In therapy sessions decades later, Blake revealed that his father had once locked him in a closet for days as punishment for missing a line, an experience that triggered lifelong claustrophobia and panic attacks. This early trauma created a profound disconnection from normal emotional responses that colleagues found disturbing long before his legal troubles began. Bonnie Lee Bakley was a controversial figure in her own right. She had a troubled past with a history of financial scams and a reputation for pursuing relationships with celebrities. Her marriage to Blake was tumultuous, marked by mistrust and tension from the beginning. On the night of May 4, 2001, Bonnie was fatally shot while sitting in Blake's car outside a restaurant in Studio City, California. Blake claimed he had gone back inside the restaurant to retrieve a gun he had accidentally left behind and returned to find her dead. Blake's account of the events raised immediate suspicion. Blake was arrested and charged, sparking a media frenzy. The trial became a sensation, with intense public scrutiny and widespread speculation about Blake's guilt. Many believed he was responsible for her passing, even though the prosecution's case was largely circumstantial. In 2005, Blake was acquitted of the charges, but was later found liable for Bonnie's wrongful passing in a civil suit, further tarnishing his reputation. Blake's demeanor during the trial did little to garner public sympathy. His cold, detached, and sometimes combative attitude made him appear unremorseful, deepening public distrust and dislike. His legal troubles, combined with the shocking nature of the crime, permanently damaged his career and personal life, turning him into a pariah in Hollywood. Even before the scandal, Blake was known for being difficult to work with. A former child star who found fame as an adult with his Emmy-winning performance in Beretta, Blake had a reputation for his temper and confrontational behavior on set. Directors and co-stars often found him abrasive and challenging, which contributed to his declining popularity in the industry long before his legal troubles began. Peter Sellers. On set, Peter's behavior was notoriously unpredictable. He often argued with directors and co-stars over creative decisions, and his temperamental nature made him prone to walking off set when things didn't go his way. These disruptions created a tense working environment, with many directors vowing never to collaborate with him again after enduring his mood swings and demands. His erratic conduct frustrated colleagues who were caught between admiring his comedic genius and struggling with his mercurial temperament. One of the most notable figures to experience this duality was Blake Edwards, the director of the Pink Panther series. Sellers and Edwards had a famously tumultuous working relationship. While Edwards recognized Sellers' unique comedic brilliance and credited him with much of the success of the Pink Panther films, he also described the actor as exceptionally difficult to manage. Their relationship alternated between mutual admiration and intense conflict, with Edwards once remarking that Sellers was a genius, but also a very difficult person to deal with. Their clashes became legendary, adding another layer of intrigue to the films they created together. What made the Sellers-Edwards relationship particularly complex was their strange creative symbiosis. Despite their explosive arguments, which once culminated in Sellers throwing a cream pie in Edwards' face during an actual disagreement, they produced their best work together. Edwards' daughter Jennifer revealed years later that her father kept a private collection of affectionate letters from Sellers, written during periods of reconciliation. In one, Sellers had written, "We fight because we both see something perfect that's just beyond our reach, and it drives us mad." After Sellers' passing, Edwards was found weeping in his office, telling his wife Julie Andrews, "I've lost the other half of my creative brain." Peter's personal life was no less tumultuous. He was married 4 times, and each relationship was marked by conflict and instability. His ex-wives often described him as emotionally abusive and erratic, painting a portrait of a man whose personal insecurities and volatile personality made it nearly impossible to maintain healthy relationships. His second wife, Swedish actress Britt Ekland, spoke publicly about his controlling and unpredictable behavior during their marriage, contributing to the public perception of Sellers as deeply troubled. Elizabeth Taylor. Taylor's love life was a constant source of fascination for the public, largely because of her many marriages. Over the course of her life, she married 8 times to 7 different men, a statistic that became one of the defining aspects of her personal image. Her most famous and tumultuous relationship was with actor Richard Burton. The two first married in 1964, but their relationship, which was marked by passionate love and equally intense arguments, was scandalous from the start. Both were married to other people when they first began their affair, which was widely publicized and considered one of the biggest Hollywood scandals of the 1960s. Their affair drew sharp criticism, especially because it was seen as an affair of convenience and opportunism given both of their celebrity statuses at the time. Their relationship was characterized by dramatic public fights, reconciliations, and on-again, off-again separations, which kept the media and the public enthralled. After divorcing once, they remarried in 1975, only to divorce again in 1976. The public's fixation on their relationship was relentless, and while many admired the passion and intensity of their romance, others saw it as evidence of their personal instability. The media often portrayed their relationship as dysfunctional, with their constant arguments and highly publicized breakups adding fuel to the fire. Their volatile relationship, combined with Taylor's repeated marriages, painted her as someone unable to maintain a stable, lasting relationship, which contributed to her controversial image. While her marriages were a source of scandal, Elizabeth Taylor's extravagant lifestyle also attracted significant criticism. Known for her love of luxury and opulence, she was often seen as a symbol of excess. Taylor had a penchant for collecting expensive jewelry, particularly diamonds, which became another hallmark of her public persona. One of her most famous purchases was the Taylor Burton diamond, a 33.19 carat stone given to her by Richard Burton, which generated considerable media attention. Her passion for luxury and glamour often clashed with the more frugal and modest sensibilities of the public, leading some to view her as wasteful or out of touch with reality. She also lived in grand estates and was often photographed at lavish events, solidifying her image as a star who was more interested in wealth and glamour than in addressing the more mundane aspects of life. Elizabeth Taylor was also seen as a figure who reveled in drama, both in her personal life and on the screen. Her marriages were frequently marked by public spectacle and controversy, making it hard for people to separate her professional success from her personal entanglements. The public's constant focus on her personal affairs seemed to overshadow her work as an actress, even though she was one of the most accomplished actresses of her time, winning 2 Academy Awards for Best Actress and starring in films such as Cleopatra, 1963, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, 1958, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, in 1966. The affair with Richard Burton, in particular, was one of the most talked about aspects of Taylor's life, and it became a symbol of her inability to find lasting happiness. While some viewed her as a victim of circumstance or a woman who followed her heart regardless of societal expectations, others saw her as selfish and unable to maintain the responsibilities that come with marriage. Many people judged her for her lack of discretion and her willingness to disregard the feelings of others in pursuit of her desires. Another point of controversy in Taylor's life was her frequent divorces. The idea that someone as famous as Elizabeth Taylor would marry and divorce so many times was viewed by some as a personal failure. While others may have sympathized with her struggles in love, many criticized her for not being able to maintain a long-term commitment. Each marriage and divorce seemed to add to the narrative of Taylor as a woman whose personal life was marked by drama and instability. This image of the serial bride fed into the notion that she was a star, whose personal turmoil was as much a part of her legacy as her work on screen. Tatum ONeal. Tatum's fraught relationship with her father was one of Hollywood's most infamous family dramas. Their bond was marked by public fights, accusations, and emotional scars that played out in the media. Tatum openly accused Ryan of being abusive, claiming that his behavior contributed significantly to the dysfunction in their family. These revelations shocked fans and cemented the ONeals as a symbol of Hollywood's darker side, where fame and familial conflict intertwined. The public's perception of Tatum became deeply tied to the image of a young woman struggling to navigate life in a chaotic, highly scrutinized environment. Tatum's traumatic childhood extended far beyond her father's neglect. At just 7 years old, she was already being prepared for her roles in Paper Moon, when her mother, actress Joanna Moore, lost custody due to severe substance addiction. Tatum later revealed that while living with her mother, she was subjected to physical mistreatment by Moore's boyfriends and was sometimes left alone for days without adequate food. By the time she went to live with her father, Ryan, she had already developed post-traumatic stress disorder and abandonment issues that made her vulnerable to further exploitation. During the filming of Paper Moon, director Peter Bogdanovich noticed Tatum's unusual maturity and emotional depth, later writing, "She wasn't acting, she was drawing from a well of pain no child should know." In addition to her family struggles, Tatum battled a long history of substance abuse. Her addiction issues led to multiple arrests for substance-related offenses, including heroin possession, which further damaged her reputation. Her substance use not only impacted her public image, but also disrupted her career. Producers and directors saw her as unreliable, and her struggles made it difficult for her to secure consistent work in Hollywood. On set, Tatum's behavior was often erratic, adding another layer of difficulty to her professional life. She gained a reputation for being hard to work with, frequently clashing with co-stars and directors. Her personal struggles bled into her work, creating an unstable environment that left many in the industry hesitant to hire her. While she remained a talented actress, her off-screen challenges overshadowed her abilities, leading to a decline in her opportunities and prominence in the film world. John Wayne. Wayne's conservative views often put him at odds with many in Hollywood and the broader public. His political beliefs, particularly his strong support for the Vietnam War, sparked criticism as the war was deeply unpopular with a large portion of the American population, especially during the counterculture movements of the 1960s and 1970s. Wayne's outspoken endorsement of the war, along with his more general conservative stances, made him a symbol of the right-wing establishment, which alienated many liberals and anti-war activists. Perhaps more damaging to his reputation were his comments on race. Wayne's views on African Americans and Native Americans were considered by many to be racist. He made several controversial statements throughout his career, including derogatory comments about African Americans, and expressed admiration for figures like General George Armstrong Custer, who was notorious for his brutal treatment of Native Americans. For many, these comments reinforced an image of Wayne as a man with a narrow, exclusionary worldview, further solidifying his divisiveness. These views were often at odds with the more progressive climate in Hollywood and broader American society, contributing to his image as a relic of a less tolerant time. John Wayne's tough guy persona, which served him so well in his career, also added to his complex and sometimes off-putting image. As the epitome of the macho man, Wayne's on-screen characters, stoic, brave, and unwavering, were often seen as arrogant or insensitive by those who did not share his worldview. His portrayal of masculinity as absolute strength and self-reliance sometimes came across as overly rigid, leaving little room for empathy or vulnerability. This persona, while adored by many, was off-putting to others who viewed it as out of touch with the changing cultural attitudes of the time. Wayne's relationships with colleagues also contributed to his reputation as a difficult figure to work with. One of the most famous feuds in his career was with director Howard Hawks. Despite working together on several films, including Red River and El Dorado, their relationship became increasingly strained due to creative differences. Wayne's dominant personality and reluctance to accept direction often clashed with Hawks' more nuanced approach to filmmaking. Their tension was a reflection of Wayne's overall approach to his career, one in which he frequently assumed control and pushed his personal vision, sometimes at the expense of his relationships with fellow filmmakers. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford built a reputation as a perfectionist who demanded nothing less than complete control over her image and performances. Her commitment to perfectionism extended not just to her professional work, but also to every aspect of her personal life. She was a stickler for discipline both on and off the set, which led to tension with directors, producers, and co-stars who found her exacting standards hard to meet. Joan was notorious for her work ethic, but this very drive also made her challenging to work with. Her insistence on having things done her way often resulted in difficult and uncomfortable working conditions for those around her. Joan's demand for control extended to her personal appearance and public image. She was obsessed with cleanliness and order, going to extreme lengths to ensure everything around her was perfect. Her meticulousness didn't end at the studio doors. She applied the same standards to her home life. She demanded that her household and personal belongings be impeccably neat and orderly. Joan's intense discipline and need for control in all aspects of her life were not always well received. Her co-stars often complained about her rigid demands, on set, noting that she could be a perfectionist to the point of being difficult and unapproachable. Stories surfaced of Joan requiring her co-stars to adhere to her standards, creating a tense and uncomfortable atmosphere on set. Her behavior made it challenging for other actors to collaborate with her, as they felt stifled by her constant need to be in charge. One of the most infamous aspects of Joan Crawford's career was her long-standing rivalry with actress Bette Davis. Their feud became one of Hollywood's most well-known and bitter battles, which only intensified when the two were cast together in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, 1962. The film, a psychological thriller, brought the two actresses, both known for their powerful screen presences, together in roles of older actresses battling jealousy and madness. However, behind the scenes, the relationship between Joan and Bette was nothing short of hostile. The two women were already rivals, and their animosity reached new heights on the set. Both were known for their strong personalities and willingness to fight for what they believed was best for their careers, but their competition often spilled over into sabotage and petty actions. Lana Turner. Lana Turner's career was marred by personal scandals and a reputation for being difficult to work with, which overshadowed her considerable talent. The most infamous episode of Lana's life was the 1958 passing of her boyfriend Johnny Stompanato, a notorious gangster with ties to organized crime. Their relationship was volatile and abusive, characterized by frequent arguments and violent confrontations. On the night of April 4th, 1958, during a heated altercation between Johnny and Lana at her Beverly Hills home, Lana's 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, intervened, piercing Johnny with a kitchen knife. Cheryl later testified that she acted to protect her mother, who she believed was in imminent danger. The case was ruled as justifiable, but the scandal rocked Hollywood and significantly tarnished Lana's reputation. Public fascination with the incident turned her life into tabloid fodder, with lurid headlines and invasive coverage overshadowing her film career. Many questioned her parenting, her judgment in relationships, and the truth of what had occurred that fateful night. Despite being cleared of wrongdoing, the scandal followed Lana for the rest of her life, making her more infamous for her off-screen drama than her on-screen achievements. Beyond the Stompanato affair, Lana had a reputation for being a diva on set. She was known for her demanding behavior and for clashing with directors and co-stars. Her insistence on perfection and her unwillingness to compromise often created tension during productions. Many in Hollywood found her difficult to work with, describing her as temperamental and high maintenance. These qualities earned her a reputation as one of the most challenging stars of her era, alienating colleagues and making her unpopular within the industry. Jane Fonda. Fonda's opposition to the Vietnam War became one of the defining elements of her public persona. During the height of the conflict, she used her platform as a major Hollywood star to speak out against the war, a stance that was deeply unpopular with many Americans, particularly those with ties to the military. One of the most controversial actions she took was her 1972 visit to North Vietnam, during which she appeared in photographs sitting on an anti-aircraft gun, an image that would haunt her for years. This earned her the derisive nickname Hanoi Jane, and many saw it as an act of betrayal against American soldiers who were fighting in the war. For many, her outspoken criticism of the U.S. government's actions during the war, coupled with her visit to the enemy's territory, made her appear unpatriotic, and the backlash was swift and severe. She was condemned by military families, veterans, and even some of her Hollywood peers, who felt that she had crossed a line in her opposition to the war. Fonda's anti-war activism and her visit to North Vietnam became a permanent stain on her image for many Americans. Even decades later, Fonda would express regret for her visit, acknowledging that she did not fully understand the political implications of her actions at the time. Yet for many, the damage was done. While she was a vocal advocate for peace, many viewed her as an enemy of the state, and her actions significantly tarnished her reputation for years to come. Beyond her political activism, Fonda's fitness videos in the 1980s also contributed to her complicated legacy. While these workout tapes were hugely popular and helped to launch the fitness craze of the decade, they were not without their criticisms. For some, Fonda's workout videos were seen as promoting unrealistic body standards and an image of health that was difficult, if not impossible, for many women to achieve. Fonda's perpetuation of a certain ideal body type, which emphasized slimness and a highly toned physique, was seen by critics as contributing to the body image issues faced by many women. Furthermore, while the videos were intended to encourage fitness and well-being, some critics believed that the emphasis on appearance rather than health could have negative psychological effects on viewers. Fay Dunaway. Fay Dunaway's demanding behavior on set, coupled with her fiery temperament and perfectionism, created tension and made her unpopular with many directors, co-stars, and crew members. Her insistence on high standards often led to clashes with those around her. She was described as a perfectionist who could be harsh and critical, unwilling to compromise in pursuit of her vision. While this drive for excellence contributed to her remarkable performances, it also alienated those she worked with. Her temper was legendary, and she was known to throw tantrums and make outrageous demands, behaviors that became part of her public persona. One of the most infamous examples of her difficult behavior came from the set of Mommy Dearest, where Fay played the iconic yet controversial role of Joan Crawford. The film itself became notorious, and stories about Fay's conduct during production added fuel to the fire. Cast and crew members reported that she was prone to emotional outbursts and treated those around her poorly. Her intense commitment to portraying Crawford led to claims that she stayed in character, even off camera, contributing to a volatile atmosphere on set. The negative press surrounding her behavior during Mommy Dearest became a defining moment in her career, overshadowing her dedication to the role and reinforcing her image as difficult. Fay's feuds with other industry figures further cemented her reputation. One of her most notable conflicts was with Roman Polansky during the filming of Chinatown. The two clashed repeatedly, with Polansky reportedly pulling out strands of her hair during a heated moment on set, and Fay accusing him of being disrespectful and controlling. Their antagonistic relationship spilled into the public sphere, with Fay openly criticizing Polansky in interviews years after the film's release. Marilyn Monroe. Despite her immense popularity, Monroe was often plagued by emotional and psychological issues that impacted her professional behavior. She was known to frequently struggle with depression, anxiety, and insecurity. And these mental health challenges often manifested in ways that disrupted her career. Her bouts with these issues led to her being late for film and sometimes missing work altogether, which caused significant delays in production schedules. This unreliability created frustration among directors, producers, and co-stars who found it challenging to work with someone whose personal struggles affected the flow of their work. Her late arrivals and absences on set were not isolated incidents. Marilyn's emotional turmoil sometimes made it difficult for her to maintain the discipline required on set, and her behavior often led to a lack of trust from those she worked with. Directors and crew members frequently had to adjust their plans to accommodate her, and many found her to be unpredictable and erratic. These delays would often result in extended shooting days, added costs, and ultimately tension between her and her colleagues. While Monroe was seen as a natural talent, her erratic behavior and personal challenges created an environment that was sometimes difficult to navigate for those around her. In addition to these struggles, Marilyn's career was complicated by her desire to break free from the stereotypical roles that Hollywood often assigned her. She became synonymous with the dumb blonde persona, a typecast that relegated her to light, comedic roles that played on her physical beauty and sexual appeal. And while Monroe was undoubtedly one of the most photographed and admired women of her time, she yearned for more. She sought to be recognized not just as a sex symbol, but as a serious actress capable of portraying more complex and substantial characters. This desire to transcend her public image as a blonde bombshell became a driving force in her career. In 1954, frustrated with the limitations imposed on her by Hollywood studios and eager to have more control over her roles, Marilyn took a bold step by founding her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions. This move was groundbreaking, as it marked one of the first instances of an actress taking control of her career in a significant way, at a time when the industry was overwhelmingly dominated by men. She sought to create more challenging and varied roles for herself, hoping to demonstrate her range as an actress and gain more artistic freedom. This decision, however, was met with resistance and even resentment from many in the male-dominated film industry. Many in Hollywood were unaccustomed to women asserting such independence, especially an actress who was already one of the highest paid and most famous stars in the world. Her efforts to break away from the traditional studio system and her desire for greater creative control were seen as a direct challenge to the power structures of Hollywood. Roman Polansky. In 1977, Polansky was involved in a legal case which received substantial media attention. He pled guilty to charges related to the case after being accused of serious misconduct. The case was highly publicized, and Polansky's status as an acclaimed director added to the media focus. However, before the sentencing could take place, Polansky left the United States in 1978, citing concerns about the legal proceedings. Polansky's decision to leave the U.S. and remain abroad has been a point of ongoing discussion and debate. His choice to avoid the judicial process rather than face the legal consequences led to significant criticism. The legal case and Polansky's departure have been part of the ongoing conversation about his personal reputation, and many people viewed his actions as problematic in terms of accountability within the Hollywood community. Polansky's situation stirred mixed reactions. Some individuals continued to support him, emphasizing his cinematic achievements and the personal challenges he had faced. Polansky had survived the trauma of losing his family during World War II, and these experiences were reflected in his work. Others, however, expressed concerns about his actions and the potential message of allowing him to continue working in Hollywood. The fact that he had never served a prison sentence for his legal case led some to question the industry's response to personal misconduct, when the talent involved was significant. Frank Sinatra. One of the primary reasons Sinatra was disliked was his notorious temper. Known for being quick to anger, Sinatra had a reputation for being rude and aggressive, especially when things didn't go his way. His outbursts were infamous, and he wasn't afraid to yell at those around him, including friends, co-workers, and even fans. There were countless reports of Sinatra becoming irate over minor issues, often belittling those around him. He had no tolerance for what he perceived as disrespect, and he would lash out, leaving many to feel intimidated or hurt by his volatile behavior. His clashes with reporters were especially well known. Sinatra famously had run-ins with the press, often reacting with hostility when photographers tried to take his picture or when journalists asked him questions he found invasive. In one of his more infamous moments, he physically attacked a photographer, an act that reinforced his reputation as a man prone to violent outbursts. Another major factor that led to Sinatra being disliked was his alleged connections to the mafia. Throughout his career, rumors persisted that Sinatra had ties to organized crime syndicates, and these associations cast a shadow over his public image. Sinatra was often seen hobnobbing with notorious mob figures, which fueled speculation about his involvement with the mafia. It was widely believed that he used these connections to advance his career, securing roles and opportunities that others might not have received thanks to the power and influence of the mob. While Sinatra never openly admitted to these ties, his associations with well-known mafia figures like Lucky Luciano and others only added to the suspicion that he may have used his criminal connections for personal gain. This created an air of discomfort around Sinatra, as many in Hollywood and the public were wary of his dealings with criminals. Sinatra's personal life, particularly his relationships, also made him a controversial figure. He was married 4 times, but he was notorious for his infidelities throughout those marriages. His love life was highly publicized, with a series of affairs that garnered tabloid headlines. His most famous marriage to actress Maya Farrow, for example, was marked by rumors of cheating and emotional abuse. Sinatra's inability to remain faithful made him seem unreliable and untrustworthy, which only added to his negative public perception. His extramarital affairs were not only damaging to his personal relationships, but also became fodder for the press, cementing his reputation as a womanizer and someone who couldn't maintain stable relationships. This unfaithfulness, combined with his often abrasive behavior, made him a less than admirable figure in the eyes of many. Marlon Brando. Brando was notorious for his clashes with directors and co-stars, often creating tension on movie sets. One of the most famous examples of his difficult behavior occurred during the production of Apocalypse Now, 1979. Director Francis Ford Coppola had a famously difficult time working with Brando, who showed up to the set overweight and unprepared. Brando's lack of commitment to the film caused significant delays, frustrating Coppola and the entire crew. Reports indicate that Brando was not only unprepared for his role, but he also refused to learn his lines, demanding that they be read to him on set. His behavior reportedly led to hours of wasted time and contributed to the already troubled production of the film. His behavior on set became legendary, and many in Hollywood considered him difficult to work with because of his erratic professionalism and refusal to adhere to conventional filmmaking practices. In addition to his unpredictable behavior, Brando was known for his strong and often controversial opinions. He was a staunch activist who spoke out on civil rights and Native American issues, using his platform to challenge the status quo. Brando's outspoken nature earned him admiration from some quarters, but it also made him a polarizing figure, particularly among the Hollywood establishment. His political activism came into the public eye during the 1973 Academy Awards when Brando won the Oscar for his iconic role in The Godfather, 1972. In a highly controversial move, Brando refused to accept the award, sending Native American activist Sachin Littlefeather in his place. Littlefeather declined the Oscar on Brando's behalf, citing his protest against the way Native Americans were treated by Hollywood. This act was seen by many as a bold statement of solidarity with marginalized groups, but it also led to significant backlash. Many in the industry viewed Brando's actions as an affront to the Oscars and to the film industry's traditions. This refusal to accept the prestigious award was one of the most infamous moments in Hollywood history, and it solidified Brando's reputation as someone who was willing to risk alienating others for his principles. Despite his outspoken advocacy for social causes, Brando's personal life was marred by controversy and dysfunction. He was notorious for his numerous affairs, many of which were tumultuous and often left a trail of broken relationships. Brando fathered multiple children, some of whom later revealed painful details about their relationship with him. His children spoke about neglect, emotional abuse, and the absence of a stable father figure in their lives. These revelations damaged Brando's public image, turning the public's perception of him from that of a misunderstood genius to a man who struggled to maintain healthy and consistent relationships. His reputation as a loving father was shattered, and the personal struggles he faced were often seen as indicative of his overall inability to manage his life. Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood tragically passed away on November 29, 1981, under mysterious and highly contentious circumstances. Her passing, which occurred at the age of 43, became one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries, and it continues to be a subject of speculation and intrigue decades later. Wood had been on a weekend boating trip with her husband, actor Robert Wagner, and fellow actor Christopher Walken aboard their yacht, the Splendor, off the coast of Catalina Island, California. The three were spending time together, but as the evening wore on, a series of events unfolded that would lead to Wood's passing. She was found drowned in the cold waters off the coast, her body discovered floating near the yacht, wearing a nightgown and socks. The initial conclusion from the authorities was that Wood's passing was accidental. She had likely fallen overboard while trying to secure a dinghy from the side of the yacht after an argument with Wagner. However, this explanation failed to satisfy many, and over the years, numerous questions arose about the true nature of what happened that night. At the time of her passing, Wood's relationship with Wagner was reportedly troubled, with allegations of intense emotional conflict. In addition, Walken, who was on the boat with them that night, was referred to have had a strained relationship with Wagner, and there was speculation that he and Wood had a romantic connection. The night before, there was reportedly an argument between Wood and Wagner, and Wood was said to have become upset. The exact details of what happened that night remain unclear, but conflicting stories and inconsistent statements from the people involved only deepened the mystery. As the years went on, there were increasing doubts about the initial ruling of accidental passing. Some questioned whether Wood had accidentally fallen off the boat or if there had been foul play involved. Allegations of Wagner's potential involvement in her passing became a focal point of public scrutiny. Wagner's behavior, his refusal to cooperate fully with investigators, and his vague accounts of the events leading up to Wood's disappearance added to suspicions that something more sinister had occurred. The case was officially reopened in 2011 after renewed public interest. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department decided to revisit the investigation, and after further review of the evidence, Wagner was named a person of interest in the case. This decision to reopen the investigation led to increased media attention and public speculation about Wagner's role in Wood's tragic end. Although no charges were filed, the renewed focus on the case brought fresh attention to unanswered questions. Natalie Wood's passing, shrouded in uncertainty and controversy, left a deep scar on her legacy. Whether due to the suspicions surrounding the events that night, the ongoing media attention, or the unresolved questions regarding the role of those present, her tragic passing remains one of the most controversial and talked about events in Hollywood history. Charlie Chaplin's perfectionism, while contributing to his artistic genius, also made him a challenging and often frustrating figure on set. Chaplin's insistence on perfection and his meticulous attention to detail were hallmarks of his directorial style, but they often led to delays, tension, and conflicts with his co-stars and crew members. He was known for demanding countless retakes of a single scene, which would result in hours of extra work and testing the patience of everyone involved. For example, during the making of City Lights, 1931, one of his most famous films, Chaplin reportedly insisted on doing dozens, if not hundreds, of retakes for a single shot. In one memorable instance, he had an actor perform a scene with a flower in a bouquet at a particular angle, only to keep having it redone over and over to ensure it was absolutely perfect. This obsessive nature, while ensuring the final product was exceptional, made it grueling for those involved in the production. Crew members were pushed to their limits, and actors were often left exhausted and frustrated by Chaplin's unyielding demands. The constant retakes, which some regarded as unnecessary, added significant time to the film's production schedule and created a sense of unease and tension on set. His focus on every minute detail, down to the smallest gesture or prop, could come across as excessive to those working with him. Chaplin's perfectionism wasn't just limited to technical details. It extended to his performance as well. His dedication to achieving exactly what he envisioned for his films meant that he often became deeply involved in every facet of the production, leaving little room for others to contribute creatively. He was known to insist on handling most of the aspects of the film himself, from the writing to the directing to the performance, further alienating collaborators and leaving them feeling sidelined or ignored. This made him seem controlling and overly dominant, which led to many of his colleagues feeling frustrated by his approach. Beyond his perfectionism, Chaplin's complex and eccentric personality contributed to his difficulties in maintaining positive relationship with others in the industry. He was an intensely private individual, which made him somewhat mysterious and enigmatic to those around him. He preferred to keep his personal life shielded from public view, which was not uncommon for public figures of his stature. But it made him appear distant and at times unapproachable. Chaplin's quiet, secretive nature, coupled with his eccentricities, created an image of someone who was difficult to understand and, consequently, easy to resent. He was an artist, driven by a singular vision, but that vision often isolated him from others who couldn't keep up with his demanding nature. His eccentricities also extended beyond his professional life. Chaplin was known for his highly individualistic behaviors, such as wearing flamboyant clothing, indulging in eccentric hobbies, and even maintaining a reputation for eccentric personal habits that raised eyebrows. While these quirks made him an unforgettable character, they also made him a target for criticism. His behavior, which some found charming, often rubbed others the wrong way. To some in the Hollywood community, he seemed like an aloof genius whose refusal to conform made him difficult to collaborate with. Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty's reputation as a womanizer became a defining aspect of his public persona, which fascinated some while alienating others. Beatty was linked to a long list of famous women over the years, including actresses like Natalie Wood, Diane Keaton, and Madonna. His relationships were constantly in the spotlight, and his status as a notorious playboy became almost as famous as his work in film. His reputation as a ladies' man led to him being dubbed Hollywood's most eligible bachelor during the height of his career. While some saw his romantic escapades as a mark of his charm and appeal, others found it off-putting, particularly as it became clear that his relationships were often brief and lacked any long-term commitment. Beatty's womanizing tendencies added to a broader narrative about his lack of emotional stability and his inability to form lasting, meaningful connections, which made him appear superficial or self-serving in the eyes of many. Beyond his personal life, Beatty was known for being demanding and controlling on set, which further complicated his reputation in Hollywood. As an actor and director, he had a very specific vision for his projects and was deeply invested in the creative process. However, his perfectionism sometimes caused friction with directors co-stars and crew members, as he often pushed for delays and changes to ensure that the final product met his standards. His insistence on having things done his way, while admirable in some respects, often led to frustration among those working with him. One of the most famous examples of Beatty's perfectionism and the resulting difficulties on set came during the production of Reds, 1981, the epic historical drama that he directed and starred in. The film, which was meant to portray the lives of two prominent American radicals during the Russian Revolution, ran significantly over budget and behind schedule due to Beatty's meticulous nature. His insistence on retakes and his perfectionist tendencies made the production notoriously difficult, and the film's lengthy and tumultuous shooting process led to conflicts between him and his cast and crew. While Reds ultimately earned critical acclaim and several Academy Award nominations, the production itself became a cautionary tale about Beatty's demanding nature and the toll it took on the people around him. Bette Davis. Bette Davis had a reputation for not only being one of the most talented actresses of her generation, but also for her unwillingness to conform to the industry's expectations. This made her both deeply respected and disliked within Hollywood circles. Throughout her career, Bette fought for better roles and more creative control, often clashing with studio executives who sought to dictate the terms of her career. Her battles with the system, however, did not come without consequences. While her boldness and advocacy for herself earned her admiration from fellow actors and fans, it also made her a controversial figure in a town where conformity often led to more success. Bette Davis's relationship with the Hollywood studio system was fraught with tension. In the 1930s and 1940s, when she was one of the most prominent actresses at Warner Brothers, she often fought with studio heads for better roles. At the time, actors were typically under long-term contracts, and studios wielded significant power over their careers, including the roles they would play. Bette resented being typecast and frequently clashed with studio executives when they pushed her into roles she found unchallenging or beneath her. One of her most notable conflicts was with Jack Warner, the head of Warner Brothers, when he tried to deny her a role in Of Human Bondage, 1934. She famously took the matter to court and, in a landmark legal case, won the right to leave Warner Brothers and sign a contract with another studio. This victory was a testament to her tenacity and desire for creative freedom, but it also made her enemies in the industry, who saw her as a troublemaker. While Davis was respected for her skill and professional commitment, her tough, no-nonsense demeanor often led to her being labeled difficult to work with. She was a perfectionist, driven by a desire to create meaningful, impactful performances, and she expected nothing less from those around her. Whether it was co-stars, directors, or crew members, Bette demanded that everyone bring their best to the set, and she didn't tolerate mediocrity. Her exacting standards created tension in many of her films, particularly in projects where she felt her co-stars or the crew weren't pulling their weight. On the set of Jezebel, 1938, for instance, her famous professionalism clashed with her co-star, Henry Fonda, who was relatively new to the business. While many admired her dedication to her craft, others found her demanding attitude exhausting and even unpleasant to deal with. One of the most famous aspects of Bette Davis's career was her rivalry with fellow actress Joan Crawford, which became one of the most legendary feuds in Hollywood history. Their animosity is best known for its bitter, off-screen context during the making of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, 1962. The film's production was plagued with personal conflicts between the two actresses, both of whom were known for their strong personalities and their long-standing animosity toward each other. Judy Garland, celebrated for her extraordinary talent and unforgettable roles in classics like The Wizard of Oz. However, behind her public image as a radiant star lay a life marked by intense personal struggles and professional difficulties. Starting her career in Hollywood at a young age, Judy faced immense pressure that eventually took a heavy toll on her mental health and well-being. Judy's substance dependency and alcohol began during her early years at MGM, where studio executives placed her under intense scrutiny. To keep up with grueling work schedules, she was given amphetamines to stay awake and barbiturates to sleep. This cycle of substance use led to a lifelong battle with addiction that profoundly affected her career. By the time she transitioned into adulthood, her substance dependency and alcohol had worsened, making her increasingly unreliable on set. She was often late or unable to perform, causing significant delays and frustration for directors and co-stars. Her emotional instability further complicated her work relationships. Judy was known for her mood swings and frequent breakdowns, which created an unpredictable environment for those around her. While her immense talent and charisma made her a sought-after star, her erratic behavior and unreliability caused tension and strained her professional relationships. Many in Hollywood admired her abilities, but found her challenging to collaborate with due to her personal struggles. Judy's troubled personal life also made headlines and contributed to her difficulties. She had 5 marriages, many of which were tumultuous and ended in divorce. Her marriage to director Vincente Minnelli, with whom she worked on films such as Meet Me in St. Louis, was particularly fraught. While their professional collaboration yielded critical and commercial success, their personal relationship was strained by Judy's substance abuse and emotional instability. Minnelli reportedly struggled to manage both their personal and professional dynamics, and their marriage ultimately ended in divorce. Howard Hughes's mental health issues significantly contributed to his controversial and often troubled reputation. A key factor in his erratic behavior was his obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, which was largely responsible for the bizarre and increasingly isolated lifestyle he adopted later in life. Hughes's OCD manifested in extreme and almost compulsive hygiene practices. He had an intense fear of germs and contamination, leading him to take extreme measures to avoid any perceived risk of uncleanliness. One of the most notorious aspects of his behavior was his insistence on burning clothes if someone he deemed unclean had touched them. His irrational fear of germs became so severe that he would go to great lengths to ensure that nothing touched his skin that had come into contact with anyone else. This obsessive behavior led to his growing reclusiveness. Hughes became more and more withdrawn, avoiding contact with most people and limiting his interactions to a small group of trusted aides and assistants. His isolation also worsened his relationships, both professionally and personally, as his behavior became more eccentric. Many of his friends, family members, and business partners distanced themselves from him. Those who remained found it difficult to cope with his increasingly erratic behavior. Hughes's desire for control extended beyond his personal life and into his professional endeavors, where it caused significant tension. Hughes was known for his extreme controlling nature, particularly when it came to his film projects. His insistence on perfection and his desire to have complete control over every detail led to countless conflicts with directors, producers, and actors. He would often interfere in the production process to an extent that slowed or even halted progress, making it difficult to complete films in a timely manner. A particularly infamous example of this was the production of The Outlaw, 1941, which was marred by Hughes's constant meddling. His obsessive nature led him to re-edit the film repeatedly and demand costly changes, which caused significant delays in its completion. The film, which was initially set to release in 1941, was not finished and released until years later due to Hughes' continual revisions and demands. The delays created financial strain and frustration, not just for the production team, but also for the film's actors and crew, who were often kept in limbo for long periods of time. Hughes's perfectionism wasn't limited to his films. It extended to his other ventures, particularly his business dealings. As the head of Hughes Aircraft, Hughes made a series of erratic and sometimes baffling decisions. His obsession with control and perfection led him to micromanage even the most minute aspects of his businesses, often ignoring the advice of his associates and making decisions that seemed irrational or counterproductive. He would sometimes change course abruptly, invest heavily in ventures that seemed risky, or make decisions based on his personal whims rather than solid business logic. This erratic behavior alienated many of his business associates and led to numerous failed ventures or costly mistakes. His employees and partners were often left to pick up the pieces after Hughes's unpredictable decisions, and his inability to trust others with the running of his empire added to his already complex legacy. As Hughes's mental health deteriorated, his behavior became increasingly erratic and paranoid. He withdrew further from public life, living in isolation for long periods and only communicating with a select few people who were willing to cater to his demands. His obsessive nature and desire for control became so extreme that he was eventually described as a recluse with little to no contact with the outside world. His physical and mental decline became apparent as his appearance grew more disheveled and his personal hygiene practices became even more extreme. While Howard Hughes's business and cinematic achievements were monumental, his personal life and professional behavior were often overshadowed by his mental health struggles. His obsessive-compulsive disorder, extreme perfectionism, and need for control made him a controversial and, at times, deeply frustrating figure to work with. The isolation and erratic decisions he made further tarnished his reputation, and his legacy is often seen as a tragic combination of brilliance and instability. Despite his significant contributions to both the film industry and aviation, Hughes's controversial and unpredictable behavior, along with his deteriorating mental health, ultimately made him a figure of fascination and distaste in equal measure. Joan Collins. Collins' reputation on set was far from ideal. She was known for her demanding behavior and temper tantrums, which made her a difficult figure to work with. Her strong-willed personality and perfectionism often clashed with directors, co-stars, and crew members. She had high expectations of everyone around her, and when things didn't go her way, she wasn't shy about expressing her dissatisfaction. Her on-set behavior reportedly made her a controversial figure, particularly during her time on the hit TV series Dynasty, which ran from 1981 to 1989. On Dynasty, Collins played the role of the ruthless and glamorous Alexis Carrington, a character that became one of her most memorable and iconic. However, her behind-the-scenes behavior caused tensions with her co-stars, particularly with Linda Evans, who portrayed the show's other lead character, Crystal Carrington. Collins and Evans reportedly had a strained relationship, and their on-screen rivalry seemed to spill over into their off-screen interactions. There were many accounts of heated arguments, with Collins sometimes refusing to speak to Evans between takes. The friction between the two was highly publicized and fueled gossip about the tension on set, making their professional relationship an infamous part of Dynasty lore. Despite this, both actresses managed to continue working together on the show for years, but their personal differences were well known. Beyond her difficulties on set, Collins's personal life also added to her notoriety. She was married 5 times, and each of her marriages seemed to attract media attention and scrutiny. Her first marriage to British actor Maxwell Reed in 1952 was short-lived and marked by allegations of manipulation and an unhappy union. Her subsequent marriages also featured their fair share of drama, with tabloid coverage often focusing on her personal affairs. One of her most famous relationships was with businessman Sir James Goldsmith, to whom she was married in 1963. The marriage, however, ended after a very public and scandalous divorce. Her fourth marriage, to American businessman Percy Gibson in 2002, was her longest lasting, and the couple remained together for many years. But Collins's early relationships and tumultuous divorces were widely covered in gossip columns. Her private life, filled with dramatic ups and downs, provided a steady stream of headlines, but it also painted her as a figure who was unable to find lasting happiness, leading to a somewhat cynical view of her as someone defined as much by scandal as by talent. Vivien Leigh, the British actress best known for her iconic performances as Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind and Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire, was widely regarded as one of the most beautiful and talented actresses of her generation. Despite her undeniable talent and 2 Academy Awards, Leigh's career and personal life were shadowed by severe mental health struggles that made her increasingly difficult to work with. Her marriage to Laurence Olivier, one of the most celebrated actors of the 20th century, was both passionate and turbulent. While they were initially considered the golden couple of theater, their relationship deteriorated as Leigh's mental health worsened. Olivier struggled to cope with her unpredictable behavior, and their marriage became increasingly strained. On set, Leigh became notorious for her perfectionism and difficult behavior. Directors found her increasingly challenging to work with as her illness progressed. She would demand countless retakes, argue about camera angles, and sometimes refuse to come out of her dressing room. Her behavior alienated colleagues and gained her a reputation for being temperamental and unreliable. Leigh's career was further complicated by her struggle with tuberculosis, which eventually took her life at the age of 53. The combination of her physical illness and mental health challenges made her last years particularly difficult and contributed to her isolation from the industry that had once celebrated her. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was one of Hollywood's first method actors and a defining talent of his generation. With his sensitive performances and striking good looks, he seemed destined for a long and distinguished career. However, a devastating car accident in 1956 marked a turning point that would ultimately lead to his reputation as one of Hollywood's most tragic figures. After leaving a dinner party at Elizabeth Taylor's house, Clift crashed his car into a telephone pole, severely disfiguring his face. Taylor rushed to the scene and reportedly saved his life by pulling broken teeth from his throat to prevent him from choking. The accident required extensive reconstructive surgery and left him in constant pain, dramatically altering his appearance. Following the accident, Clift's dependency on alcohol and painkillers intensified, making him increasingly unreliable on set. His behavior became erratic, and his once photographic memory began to fail him. Directors became hesitant to cast him, concerned about his ability to complete films. His work schedule dwindled as his reputation for being difficult and unpredictable grew. As his health and career deteriorated, Clift became increasingly isolated. The handsome, charismatic actor, who had once been compared to James Dean and Marlon Brando, became a shadow of his former self. He struggled to find work and was considered a liability by many studios. His final years were marked by loneliness and continued substance abuse. Montgomery Clift passed away in 1966 at the age of 45, alone in his New York apartment. His legacy remains that of a brilliant actor whose promising career was derailed by personal tragedy and substance abuse, becoming one of Hollywood's most poignant cautionary tales. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner, whose stunning beauty earned her the nickname the world's most beautiful animal, rose from humble beginnings in rural North Carolina to become one of Hollywood's most captivating stars. Despite her success in films like The Killers, Mogambo, and The Night of the Iguana, Gardner's fiery temperament, tumultuous relationships, and reputation for hard living made her a challenging figure both on and off set. Gardner was notorious for her bold, uncensored speech and refusal to conform to Hollywood's expectations of feminine behavior. In an era when actresses were expected to be demure and accommodating, she cursed freely, drank heavily, and spoke her mind without restraint. This behavior shocked many in the industry and earned her a reputation as unpredictable and crude. Her love life was equally dramatic. Gardner was married 3 times, to Mickey Rooney, bandleader Artie Shaw, and most famously to Frank Sinatra in what the press called the marriage of the century. All 3 marriages ended in divorce, with Gardner's volatile temper and independence contributing to their collapse. Her relationship with Sinatra was particularly stormy, characterized by passionate reconciliations, followed by public fights. On film sets, Gardner's behavior became increasingly problematic as her career progressed. She frequently arrived late, sometimes intoxicated, and was known to challenge directors publicly. Her beauty and talent kept her in demand despite these difficulties, but many directors found working with her to be an exhausting experience. As her Hollywood career waned, Gardner moved to Spain and later London, living as an expatriate for much of her later life. She became increasingly reclusive, reluctant to be seen, as age diminished her legendary beauty. By the time of her passing in 1990, at age 67, she had largely withdrawn from public life, leaving behind the image of a star whose personal demons had often overshadowed her considerable talents. Looking back at these infamous Hollywood personalities, one thing becomes clear. Behind every legendary star often lurked a complicated human being wrestling with their own demons. From substance abuse and mental health struggles to unchecked egos and traumatic pasts, these icons show us the darker side of fame's spotlight. What's fascinating is how many of these difficult personalities created some of cinema's most enduring work. Their perfectionism, while maddening to colleagues, often translated into performances and films that have stood the test of time. Chaplin's obsessive attention to detail, Davis's refusal to accept mediocrity, and Brando's commitment to authenticity all pushed the boundaries of what was possible on screen. Yet the personal cost was immense. Broken relationships, damaged reputations, and in many cases, tragic endings. Their stories remind us that talent and torment often walk hand in hand, and that the golden age of Hollywood, despite its glamorous facade, was built on the backs of deeply flawed, complex individuals whose brilliant light often cast the darkest shadows. As we look at today's celebrities, with their carefully managed social media presences, it's worth remembering that the most compelling stars have always been complicated, contradictory, and all too human. Wow, we really just pulled back the curtain on some of Hollywood's biggest names, didn't we? Makes you wonder what stories today's film sets would tell if walls could talk. I'd love to know which of these Hollywood legends you still admire, despite their difficult reputations. Sometimes the most complicated people create the most incredible art. Let me know in the comments. And if you found this interesting, I've got a whole series on Hollywood's golden age scandals lined up. Next week, we're diving into the studio system cover-ups that would shock you. hit subscribe so you don't miss it, and ring that notification bell. Thanks for hanging out with me today. See you in the next one.